Welcome to Investing in Startups. Our guest this week is Josh Muccio, founder of The Pitch and The Pitch Fund. The Pitch is a show that features startup founders pitching a panel of VCs and getting live fire feedback. The Pitch Fund invests in Josh's favorite startups that appear on The Pitch. We talked about the behind the scenes of how the show works, pitching, whether the market matter more than the founder, and the dangers of consensus investing. Josh is great. I really enjoy his show. My son enjoys the show, and I had fun with this conversation. Something else real quick. Thank you to those of you who've given us great reviews on Apple, Spotify, etc. It's really helping grow the show. And with that, I'll turn it over to the conversation with Josh. Josh, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, Joe.
I know this is going to be fun. We finally got to meet in real life recently at Camp Hustle, and now we're doing the virtual life conversation here. I think it'll be a good
it's
chat.
weird. You look and sound the same as you do in person.
Thank you. It's, my hair always looks the same. That's part of it. I have a tight rotation of t-shirts too, so I'm a very consistent look.
That's awesome.
I want to get started with a question that my son had because he enjoys watching The Pitch.
Oh my gosh,
his
are you
question,
serious?
He does. He enjoys watching the show. Now he's pitching us on, he wants to do a dropshipping business. And he is so pumped about it. And we're going to go along with it. That may be its own conversation or
That's
episode
a whole
in the
nother
future.
podcast.
Yes, which I will either be grateful to you or be upset with you.
Oh my gosh.
But he's super stoked. But his question for you seems like a perfect one to start the show, which is, what inspired you to start The Pitch?
Oh gosh. Do you want the market version or the personal my story version?
I want the personal unscripted version.
I'll give it to you that way. All right. So back in 2015, we sold our first company. It was a small exit, and it was a business serving people with broken iPhones and tablets. And it was one of those businesses where the customer was always mad. They were upset that Apple was charging them too much. And so then they were coming to us and getting a cheap repair. We did national ship-in repairs. So it was a pretty big business, but we hated it.
Were they always mad with you, or were they just mad when they came in?
No, they were just grumpy because they came in because their device that, they didn't realize was so expensive when they bought it because it was buried beneath some contract that they got from T-Mobile. Right. So they didn't realize how expensive it was. So then they're out of pocket $200 or $300. And that's better than spending $500 to have the manufacturer fix it. So that was the business. But the thing I learned was, whatever you're doing, make sure that you like the customer. And it's nothing against these customers, but they were just in a bad state of mind whenever we met them. And so when we sold that business, that's what I was in search for. I really wanted something where in 10 years, I'd still want to be doing it. So, I think that it's great after you start that first business and you can have success. You realize wow, I could actually do anything I want if given enough time. And if I'm really throw myself into this thing, I can do it. And so that really made me realize well, shoot, then what do I do? So I did some consulting, which meant I was basically without a job for a couple of years, but fell in love with this podcast called Startup. I don't know if you ever listened to the Startup podcast by Alex Bloomberg, but it was the thing that made me realize, oh, podcasts can be good. They don't just have to be, 3-hour-long rambly conversations about random stuff. I want to go deep and tell a well-crafted story. And so around the same time, I was doing another podcast because I was just all about podcasting. And one of the listeners reached out. It was this guy named Sheil Manat. Sheil was at 500 Startups. He'd exited a company, and now he runs his own venture firm. But at the time, he listened to my show, and he was like, hey, we should do a show that's like Shark Tank, but it should be real. And I was like, well, that sounds great. Because this other podcast that he listened to, it's called The Daily Hunt. He was one of 4 people that listened. So it was not a very lucrative business. So I said, you know what? Let's go all in. Let's make this show. We'll call it The Pitch. And that's kind of the origin story. In the beginning, we really wanted to democratize access to the end goal was to be able to let listeners actually invest in the companies on the show. But at the time, we couldn't really make that happen. The infrastructure for 506C and all that stuff wasn't there. And so we just focused on democratizing access to information. And that, set us on a long journey that eventually brings us here today on your podcast, Joe.
Okay. And the show's super popular. I'd imagine a lot of people listening have seen or listened to the show.
We have a
but
few.
Can you relate how the show is intended to be realistic and not like Shark Tank?
I mean, what do you mean intended? Like, what was our original vision, or like how is it actually played out in time?
Well, like the actual show is founders come on, they're talking to VCs, they're
Yes.
asking thoughtful questions. Like it plays like a real meeting. Like for someone who is a VC, it plays like a real conversation between VCs and founders. So a different vibe than Shark Tank. You did it.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I think the VCs we worked with, they were in it for more of the showmanship. And you go back and listen to some of those early episodes. And they were great. Like, they were really interesting and entertaining. Over the years, we've tended to cater more towards VCs that really, it wasn't the show for them. It was really just like, I think they started coming because they like really liked hanging out with us. And so over time, we tend to work more with the VCs that are actually writing checks into companies, because nobody wants to listen to a show and nobody ever gets investment. And so we've gotten to this point now where we just have like some really great VCs that I don't think have a ton of ego on our show. Like, everybody has some, but like for them, it's just not as, I don't know. They're not oozing ego in every conversation.
They're
And so
not
you end
wearing
up,
2 luxury watches.
no, just one,
Just one.
But they just ask really thoughtful questions. And so I think, I don't know that I can take credit for creating that. It's just we provided an environment. We stuck with it for long enough. We tend to choose the VCs that are more real and less dramatic and fake over time. And you end up with what the show is today. And the fact that you think it's a fairly close reflection of what you do on a daily basis is amazing. Like, I think in the beginning when we started it, we used to hear people talk about like, oh, I would never be involved with a show like yours. Like, the idea of pitching in public, like, people were allergic to it. Like real
From
VCs.
the founder side, they were uncomfortable with the idea.
No, the founders, every once in a while we'll run into a founder that has that. But it was more so the VCs were just like, I think Shark Tank had such a bad reputation, and people knew conceptually that our show was like Shark Tank, but they didn't realize how different it was. And so they were very quick to judge it and say, no, I would never do anything like that. Like, my job is a serious job. Why would I go on a show and pretend that it's not a serious job? Like, I don't know. I don't actually know their real reasons, but those are their stated reasons.
I watched Shark Tank recently for the first time in ages.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cringe. You know, the way they talk to founders, entrepreneurs. Showmanship's fine. I host a podcast. I'm in no position to judge people who are trying to get out there and entertain, but the deals they try and strike with people just so one-sided, so unfair, and it's just really painful for me to watch, I guess, after having been on that side of the table now for so long.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think enough people agree and have decided to become a part of our show. I mean, the way we pitch it is like, we're like Shark Tank, but for tech, like actual tech venture backable deals.
You were saying beforehand that you get around 1,000 applicants to come on the show per season.
Or they pitch to come on, or they like apply to come on the show. Yeah.
Okay, they apply, they pitch. Do they pitch to come on the pitch? What does that process look like, and what's the filtering look like?
I guess kind of, what's the best way to compare it to? It's kind of your typical VC pitch. Like, it starts with our venture partner, who you met at Camp Hustle, Peter Liu. Peter talks to hundreds of founders. He doesn't get to talk to all 1,000 that apply, but he talks to a couple hundred every season, if not more. Actually, he's going to a lot of events now and talking to founders too. He just loves this stuff, which is amazing. So he's kind of that first person you want to talk to. And then, if he thinks there's something interesting there, even if he's like got some questions or concerns, he'll still pass it on. So then Lisa, who is my wife, co-founder with me at the pitch, and now general partner with me at the pitch fund. She looks at deals from Peter, and then her favorites, they end up talking to me. Sometimes it goes in reverse. I'll find a company I'm interested in, I'll talk to them, and then they talk to Lisa, then Peter. Like, I don't know, there's not like it's not a ton of structure around it. But one thing that's unique about our process is we don't pitch internally, like why we should either work with a founder or not work with a founder. We don't talk about it internally until all three of us have spoken to the founder, because we just have this core belief that the best person to present their vision to the world is the founder. And oftentimes I think when we as VCs pitch the thing, that we're pitching a dumbed down, like watered down version of the thing. And it ends up like causing you to prejudge a company that you otherwise like would give that founder, the benefit of the doubt if you were on a call with them originally. So anyway, that's how we do things. We think it cuts down on our bias, not really like bias in the sense you're thinking, but more so like our bias on the categories we invest in, because it's pretty easy to just rule things out. You look at a pitch deck and you're like, well, this is a chip company. Why would we ever bring a chip company on our tech podcast, show? Turns out that's one of the investments we're most excited about right now, is a chip company that none of us ruled out. We just kept passing them on. And eventually we're like, this founder has something special. We're going to bring them on the show. So hopefully that answers the question, but that's how we run the process.
It does. And then can you talk a little bit about the pitch fund and how that fits into the story here?
Yeah, pretty simple. We're like fast forward basically 10 years since we started it, because we started this 2015. In 2022, so 7 years later, we bought our show back from Spotify. Long story, can't go into it, but we bought the show back from Spotify, owned our own IP again. And that's when we launched the Pitch Fund. On episode 101 of our show, we basically said, hey, we're back and we own our show and we're starting a fund. And it was kind of a test at the time, because we'd always, like I said, we'd always envisioned being able to democratize access to the funding piece as well. But it just didn't make sense. We were part of Gimlet Media, that venture-backed startup that made the startup podcast that Alex hosted, that I was talking about earlier. Like, we were a part of that whole journey, but we never got to do the fund thing until we bought the show back. But we pitched it to our audience on episode 101, and we had, I think, 1.7 million raised within the first week. Now, took a lot longer than that to like actually collect it into the fund. But fast forward a couple of years now, we are about to finish deploying Fund One. It's a $6.3 million fund that we raised publicly, because now the the platforms have kind of caught up to the legislation that was introduced in the Jobs Act 10 years ago. And now like we're able to raise money, talk about publicly the fact that we're raising money. Like I can talk about on your show, like we're going to raise another fund in 2026. And yeah, basically how it works is we find companies, we start working with them, we get to spend a lot of time with them, coaching them on their pitch. We bring them on the show. We get to hear what other VCs think of the deal. Then we bring them on the show, get them a bunch of exposure, and then we invest in them. Well, not all of them, but the ones that we think show the most promise and make sense for our fund. So we can get into portfolio construction, all the nitty gritty details if you want. I'm sure you love that stuff.
I do. I'm a total nerd for that. I talked to a founder at Camp Hustle who was debating applying coming on the show or pitching
Really?
to come on the pitch. Her concern was that she worried she'd be telegraphing her strategy by coming on the show.
Sure.
And giving away to competitors. How do you think about that within the context of the show, but more broadly? I had that conversation with founders too, and whether or not, like, totally separate to the pitch, it's like, how public should you be with what it is you're building? I'm curious for your take.
I think that's like a totally valid thing. And if someone falls firmly in that camp of like not wanting to share, I think it's hard for me to convince them that my approach is better, right? I think some people like the idea of building in public and building a community and like rallying people around you. And I think to do that, you have to cast a vision that is bigger than yourself. And a lot of times that does involve, I mean, how are you going to get people to care about what you do in the first place, right? Like, and you can probably do it without divulging too much information, but like, are fans going to realize that you're holding back? I don't know. We're just so firmly in this camp of being open and sharing the details and just trusting that that's going to actually help bring people to your vision, that that's going to be more valuable than whatever, strategic advantage you lose by some competitor maybe, copying your strategy. But also, like, I think founders can come on and like leave certain pieces of the strategy behind. Like, you can
Mm.
still be like, this is where we're going, but like, I'm not going to tell you, you know, the exact roadmap and how it's going to lay out and every feature that's going to be on it, right? Like,
Yeah, you can talk about Coca-Cola, but you don't have to give away the recipe while you're talking about Coke.
yeah. Well, and the other thing people are always worried about is like, can I say the companies I'm working with or the pilots? And I'm always just like, well, you can describe them. You'd be like, it's a really large, retail chain. They've got about 2,000 stores. Like, it has the same effect as hearing the brand. If you're the VC, you're like, okay, they've got a real customer. So that's how we think about it. But not everybody will want to be on a show like ours. And I get that.
And what's something you changed your mind about on investing in startups since you started doing the show?
That's such a good question. This concept of being non-consensus in venture, like, the only way to make any like true money that beats the competition, right, that beats the average rates of return, is to do something non-consensus. And everybody says, well, yeah, but that only works if you're non-consensus and right. And then you go, well, shoot, I'm not going to know about that till 10 years from now. I'm not going to really know if I was right. I think Charles Hudson said something to me at the last recording event, and I want to make sure I don't botch this, but it really changed how I think about investing in companies or how I justify certain decisions we make. And he's like, 90% of the time when I hear a pitch for a company and I like the founder, but I don't like the market. Like, I really like the founder. Like, I really think they can build something amazing, but the market and the way they're talking about building their business, I don't agree with. I don't think it's going to work out. He's like, 90% of the time I'm right, which is like, first of all, amazing that like he has that market analyzing skills because he has friggin' 600 companies in his portfolio. So like, his brain is like the startup early stage investing LLM, right? Like, this thing is massive and amazing. And I learn from it every single recording we do with him. But that's how he thinks about it. He's like, I'm going to be right 90% of the time. But the question is, the 10% that I'm wrong, will I be okay with it? So if you meet an amazing founder and you're like, I want to, like, I think you're wrong, but I either actually don't want to go on this journey with you, or two, I really want to go on this journey with you, even though I think you might be going about it wrong. But he's like, most of the time, he's like, I'm okay with not going on that journey with them. It's a very, very few times. So I think it's like, it's kind of a thought process for thinking about whether you're going to regret a decision or not, which arguably is probably, like, I don't know what it's like 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road as a VC, but I've noticed VCs definitely get more cynical as they age in their careers, just because you've seen what can happen at companies, the good and the bad. And because the bad happens far more often, I think it's hard to not become jaded over time. And so how do you still go into every pitch meeting with that curiosity and that openness and that conviction that like tomorrow can be better than yesterday? Like, and I think that that's a real risk that you age out. And I don't know how many people talk about like how that correlates with returns or funds under management. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that happen in those 10 to 15 years. But I think like not regretting decisions that you make is like an important thing to think about. And I think being able to clarify in an individual deal, like, will I, even though I disagree with this founder, will I regret not investing in it? And I think sometimes the answer might be yes, I'll regret not going on this journey with the founder. And I think those are the investments you want to make, even though, right, like, you maybe don't like the market, but you just really love the founder. But putting that in that frame of reference, like, I constantly go back to that now, when we're like waffling. I mean, I'm sure you see this in lots of deals you're working with where it's just like, I don't know, it could be something there. I don't know. Need more proof points. Or, maybe there's some other VCs invested that can help me get excited about it again, but you're just like kind of undecided, which sucks for the founder, but like I find myself in that position a lot. And that thought process from Charles really helped clarify things for me.
Yeah, I like that. On the non-consensus piece, you can make money investing with a consensus and be right, but it's hard to have top quartile massive outperformance if you're just
Right.
consistently going with consensus. In fact, if you're consistently going with consensus after fees, you're
Yeah.
almost certainly going to be in the bottom half of performers, which is
Right.
ironic because you feel like you're safe because you're
Yeah.
going with the crowd, but it doesn't really
Sure
work
do.
out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I wonder, like, if there's any data that shows like funds that do a co-investment strategy, but there's like a strict co-investment. We only invest if like these certain tier one, as they say, VCs are in. Like, if there's any data that shows that those funds typically underperform.
It's a good question. I bet in the short term they have some pretty good paper marks,
Oh
but
yeah.
I don't know how the medium to long term actually goes with that.
No. Hmm. I would venture a guess it's not great.
What percentage of the time, right before you're about to record, would you guess there are ones where you're like, I think I'm going to end up doing this deal? And then you see the founder just get peppered with questions for, half an hour from people you respect. And you are like, actually, I don't think I'm going to do this deal.
Oh my gosh. So in the beginning, that's definitely a thing that's changed over time. In the beginning, that happened all the time. It was just like, man, this company is so friggin' cool. And then they'd come on the show for like, wow, that's a horrible investment.
Hmm.
Right? Good thing we didn't have a fund at the time because there would be like hardly anything to invest in. But over time, it's like we've started over time, we're starting to get a lot better at identifying and de-risking and pattern matching for deals that are more likely to get done in the room. Um, which, but there's every single season this happens with at least two companies, sometimes more, where we love them. They're one of our favorite deals going into the recording event. We even had one this last event. I'm not going to say names. We met them in person the first night. And I was just like, oh, this person's really cool. I think I like what they're building. Like, there was like a hint of like, maybe they're not as awesome as I thought they were. And then they showed up and pitched, and the VCs just totally tore the business apart. And it revealed some stuff that we had missed in our diligence that was so basic. I felt like the VCs had really just taken me back to startup investing 101. And, you live and learn. Like, we would have coached the founder much differently because it was the type of thing where, with the right messaging and the right clarity in how they presented their business, they, I think, could have gotten a deal done in the room. But there was such a disconnect between the way the founder was pitching and what VCs needed to hear to make an investment that there was no momentum whatsoever in their pitch. Um, and it happens every single season, and we try to learn as much as we can so it doesn't in the future. But I think we're always going to be learning a certain percentage of the time.
If you had to rank product, founder, market in order of importance to you, how would you rank them?
Product, market, founder. Huh. I only think about market and founder. I mean, I guess I look at the product and to like get a sense for like, does this person actually know how to develop stuff that looks decent that a user would actually use? But I would still rank that last. Um, I think VCs that say that they're founder first are usually lying to themselves. They're really market first, but then those that they invest in, they want to be founder first for them, which is the right way to run it. So if I'm talking honestly, it's probably 60% market. I would love to say 50-50 market and founder, Like that's what I would aim for. But I think it's hard not to when you invest, like when you see a company and you know that the market sucks, you've already invested in it, you've seen the challenges, like it's just not going to happen no matter how good that founder is. So, but having said that, we're founder first. But anyway, that's how I would think about it.
Yeah, I think there's some markets that are just hard to execute into. I
Yeah.
talked to an awesome founder one time who was building some software for baseball cards for inventory management. Awesome product, definitely a pain point if you own baseball cards.
Yeah.
Not an awesome market to sell into. And no matter how awesome the founder is, that's just going to be a pretty steep climb.
I mean, anything is a good investment for the right price, right?
That's true.
We've got a deal we're looking at. It's like at a $1.5 million post. I'm like, what?
It's
How,
low.
what do you know, it's like their friends and family round, which is amazing. We don't typically get access to deals like that, but I'm like, should we apply a different rubric for this? Like 1.5 million? Like we could return the fund pretty easily on a, $100 million
Many
exit.
times.
Yeah. Doing great.
Yeah, on the founder first piece, I think we all value grit, industry experience, perspective, familiarity, some deep care about the problem. The thing is, we all generally would probably say, "Oh, that's great." Like I was talking to Orange Collective, and he made the point of they just invest in YC companies. He's like,
Uh-huh.
"Look, everyone coming through YC, they're all top decile founders. They're incredibly bright. Like to make it into YC, you're probably you're an Ivy grad or you
Sure.
dropped out. You have like a 1600 on the SAT and you're brilliant. And when you get to that tier of founder, even then, he's like, look, I'm still picking 3 out of 150, right? So I can say I'm founder first, but at the end of the day, I still have to make judgments within the context of that. And it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yeah, I think so. I think ranking them is hard because I think you have to have both. I think it's like you both have to be an exceptional founder and you have to be in a market that enough people think is interesting and big. But I think that's where the question is. Like, assuming we all agree the founders have to be great, how do you evaluate markets? And in particular, in new categories where the market's not defined yet, and you can't point to 10 competitors, like that's where the opportunity is. I think a lot of times is that that's again like a non-consensus market opportunity, and I mean, I think some of the most legendary funds are built off of those iconic bets that like nobody else was willing to make. So figuring out which are the right bets to make is, and which markets are actually a lot bigger than they think or than numbers might say they are. And I don't know. Those are ones where it's just like, man, if this market grows, is it growing now? Could this be big someday? And do I want to go on this journey with the founder? And maybe that goes back to Charles's quote. Like, I think that's the type of thing. You're like, well, yeah, I want to go on this journey with you, even though I'm not sure about the market yet. This is a founder I want to partner with.
What's a question you love to ask founders?
I love to ask founders the same question over and over again, which is, why did you start this company? And then when they tell me, the problem they saw in the market and the opportunity and, their past experience, I'm like, no, but really, why did you start a company? Like you're crazy. Like you're going on this 10-year journey at least. It's potentially going to define your career. Like you could burn out. Like it could, like there's so many ways this could go wrong. It could affect your family negatively. Like, why are you starting a company? Why do this to yourself? And I think the stories I most get excited about are ones where it's less like, I can't, like, this is who I am. Like, I've been starting companies. I mean, that's the stereotypical one. I've been starting, but I love also when they're like, my parents started companies. I've been watching my dad and mom like build for years. And like, growing up, like, I didn't realize how special that was. Right. But now that I'm in the workplace and realize like, this is the place where I can make the biggest difference. And I'm excited to show up to work every day. Like, I don't know. I'm riffing on a founder I spoke to recently, but that's like the kind of answer I want to hear. Shoot, now founders are in all know how to answer that question.
Mm,
No, but you can
too
tell when it's
late.
genuine, right? Like you can tell.
You can. What's a conventional view in venture that you think is BS?
I don't know if it's BS because it is like industry standard, and I feel the pull to make investments like this, but I hate investing for markups. I hate it so much. Because I think if you're investing for markups, like you're basically like you're trying to scavenge then between like a seed and series A. You're like, oh, is this company like just moments away from series A, right? Or are they going to crush it at the same pace that they went from their pre-seed to seed? And like, oh, I know the VCs, they're going to back this. Like you're just then like this arbitrage where you're like, see founder, identify opportunity, pass them on to the next VC. I I don't know. I find that so dull, just conceptually.
It's
Um,
not very romantic.
no, and I've even seen it happen with some of the VCs that we've invested with, where like in the beginning they invest with like I don't know, you see them taking chances on people and saying like, I want to bet on you super early at a low valuation, like when nobody else has bet on you yet, right? And then you see them later and they're like, well, typically what we like to see for a founder in your category is this month over month growth, and last year's ARR was this, and you're projecting this year, and those projections you're giving me, I would rather see like the last company we invested in, is doing at a their projections are to hit 10 million, in 2026, and I just don't like. I've heard enough data from VCs, like anecdotal data, give you that, from VCs at the end of their careers saying, when I go back and I look at the investments that ended up making the biggest difference for our funds, traction was not one of the defining things in them. Some of the companies we were least expecting to turn out ended up being our biggest outliers. And a lot of the companies that showed early promise in the beginning that got us the markups ended up failing spectacularly. And so I think in an environment like that, like I understand the urge to invest for markups because it helps you raise the next fund, but I think it's bad practice, hurts founders, and ultimately drives down the performance of your fund. And so I'm trying to stay strong. So
No, I love
hopefully
that.
saying this in public, putting my stake in the ground. This is the type of VC I want to be. Um, but anyway, what do you think?
No, I agree. I respect that. I mean, I've had quick markups before. I'm for them. I'm happy when they happen.
Right.
But at the same time, I think if your whole strategy is oriented around that, it's a very slippery slope into. Okay, I'll qualify this. I think if you're doing something like we do seed plus, because I know someone who does this and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
smart. Like we do seed plus checks that are big enough to make sure the seed founder has the cash to get to an A. And I
Yeah.
specialize in helping companies prepare for an A and do that well. The
Sure.
nature of it isn't entirely about markups. It's accelerant, I feel like. But
Like
if
an
you
like an accelerator,
kind of, but
but after
uh,
seed.
but after seed. But I think if your angle on the quick markup is instead more oriented around we want to be the last check in every hot round, I think that's fine sometimes. But if you're never in a round that isn't red hot, it's probably worth asking, like, is everything I'm doing totally consensus?
Yeah.
And if so, you know, ordinary effort, ordinary results, right?
Right. And I think part of my bias is actually to not fall into the bias of other VCs, because we tend to work with a lot of founders who've been burned by the system. Because if you think about it, the founders who already have the access and the opportunity to capital and the networks, they don't need our show. They just call their network up and they raise, a ridiculous amount of money on, back of the napkin idea. I'm casting a very specific stereotype, but like those founders, they don't need our help. It's the founders that live outside the valley, need access, need introductions, and frankly, like don't know what not to say in VC pitches. Those are the ones that we can have an enormous impact on. And I think for our fund, I mean, number one, it makes a great story for the show, but then for our fund, oftentimes the price on those opportunities is really incredible. And it's the type of deal that you wouldn't see in Silicon Valley. The chips company I referenced earlier, that was at a $4 million valuation. Like
So we're talking
amazing.
chips, like potato chips.
Oh yeah. I should have clarified in the beginning, not silicon. Actual chips. Actually, I have them right here. Little plug. I am invested in the company. Christie's chips. Their sour cream and onion. Oh no, this is sea salt and vinegar. Their sour cream and onion is also delicious. Their pitch is like Lay's without the Lay's, like healthier Lay's, but still actual potatoes. Vegans can eat this, I guess. I'm not vegan.
You're gonna have one.
I'm not vegan. Have one. They're delicious. A little ASMR,
yeah. Yeah, there we go. Definitely the first chip we've had on the show. Well, Josh, this is really fun. It's great talking to you. Can you talk about anyone out there, if you're a founder listening and you're like, I like this guy, I'd love to be on his show, what should they do to try and get on the pitch?
Well, first of all, they should listen to the show, because I think whether you apply to come on the show or not, there's just so much to learn. You can apply to the show when you want, but just by going to pitch.show/apply. But there's so much in every pitch, and there's so many things you can do in your pitches to like not fall into the traps that make VCs go, red flag, red flag, red flag. Like it's just so many ways of screwing up in a pitch. And because the feedback loop, you're desperate for feedback from VCs and you don't always get the actual reason they're not investing. You're lucky sometimes to get a response. Like it's hard. Where are you going to get that feedback loop to understand where you're going wrong? Well, on the show, you get to kind of hear it from other founders making some of those mistakes. Largely also they're succeeding, so you get to hear that part too. But like, I don't know how you think about this, but we have had more deals fall apart on our show recently for founders saying the terms that they want to raise, like saying a number, and they didn't have terms. Like they had no terms set from a VC, but they were saying the number they wanted, and you instantly see 2 or 3 of the VCs like tune out because they're just like, oh, that's not going to be a good fit for me, when they were leaning in moments before. And it's just like, and then what ended up happening after the show with many of those companies is they ended up raising at a much lower valuation, which was market rate, what the market, other VCs decided, but they lost that opportunity in the room to like build that connection, take things to the next step, because they set a price that they thought they could raise the next round at. So now we're very like, I should have learned this a long time ago. We're like very prescriptive about this thing. Like you can say the last amount you raised at, do not say the valuation you think you will get out of this round. You will lose. You're only going to lose unless you have a lead who set the terms. It's not worth the risk.
Well, Josh.
Anyway, sorry, that was not the question you asked.
No, it was a good answer to what would have been a good question. But
I just hate seeing founders that otherwise are building amazing businesses, and they just say one thing wrong and they lose an opportunity to connect with the VC.
All right, man.
I get passionate.
No, that's great. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, Joe, thanks for having me on. Good questions.
Hi, Joe again. Thanks for watching the show. If you'd like more of this in the future, subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to learn more about Seaplane Ventures, just check out seaplaneventures.com. Cheers.